Here's something you're doing right now that's destroying your authority. You're explaining yourself too much, too often, to people who didn't even ask. Think about your last email. Did you write 3 paragraphs justifying a simple decision? Did you preempt every possible objection before anyone raised one? You thought you were being thorough, professional, maybe even respectful. You were actually signaling submission. Research from Stanford, Axios, and decades of social psychology reveals something uncomfortable. Over-explanation doesn't demonstrate competence, it broadcasts insecurity. The more you justify your decisions unprompted, the more you telegraph to everyone watching, including yourself, that you're not confident in your position. And here's what makes this brutal. Every time you do it, you're training people to question your judgment. By the end of this video, you'll understand the psychological mechanism behind this, see exactly where you're doing it, and learn 4 techniques to communicate with the kind of brevity that creates real authority.
Most people believe thorough explanation builds trust and demonstrates competence. They think if they just explain their reasoning clearly enough, people will understand and respect their decisions more. This seems logical, obvious even. It's backwards. Axios, the media company that disrupted news, built their entire strategy on one principle. Brevity is confidence, length is fear. Their research across 300-plus organizations found that 86% of executives blame ineffective communication for workplace failures. But here's the twist. The problem wasn't too little information. It was too much unnecessary justification. When you over-explain, you're activating a psychological process called external justification. Your brain, and everyone else's, interprets the need for elaborate defense as evidence of internal doubt. Think of it like this. When someone truly confident makes a decision, they state it and move on. When someone insecure makes the same decision, they bury it in explanation, hoping the words will compensate for the uncertainty underneath. The cost? Every over-explained decision erodes your perceived competence and transfers power to others. Quick question. How many times today have you explained something nobody asked you to explain? Keep count tomorrow. The number will shock you.
Now, let's see how this plays out. In 1963, Stanley Milgram ran experiments that would become legendary. Participants were instructed to deliver what they believed were painful electric shocks to others. The authority figure, the experimenter in the lab coat, gave commands. Here's what's fascinating. When experimenters simply stated, "The experiment requires that you continue," compliance was dramatically higher than when they explained why. Brief, confident directives achieved 65% compliance. Elaborate justifications, far less. The unexpected finding: authority communicated itself through certainty and brevity. The moment the experimenter began justifying the command, explaining why it was important, offering reasons, psychological power shifted to the participant. By asking for understanding or approval through explanation, the authority figure inadvertently signaled that their position was negotiable. This isn't just about obedience experiments. It's about how human brains are wired to interpret communication as status signals. When you justify before anyone questions you, you're handing them permission to challenge what you haven't even asserted yet.
So why does this happen? Let's look at the mechanism. Research on cognitive dissonance by Pfeffer and Lawler studied over 4,000 faculty members. They found something counterintuitive. When people had strong external justification for their actions, their internal motivation actually weakened. Here's the translation. When you constantly explain your decisions, you're providing external justification, reasons outside yourself for why you're doing something. Your brain registers this pattern and concludes, if I need this many external reasons, maybe my internal judgment isn't sufficient. Now combine this with power distance research from Keltner and colleagues. They discovered that high-power individuals naturally communicate with psychological distance, abstract language, fewer words, minimal justification. Low-power individuals do the opposite. They pad their communication with explanations, apologies, qualifications. This isn't conscious, it's automatic. Your status perception directly shapes your communication pattern. And here's the vicious cycle. When you over-explain from a low-power mindset, you signal that low power to everyone watching, which reinforces the dynamic. You're not just describing your status, you're creating it through language. Think about the last time someone with real authority told you something. How many words did they use? Now think about the last time someone without authority tried to convince you of something. Notice the difference?
Does this still matter these days? Absolutely, even more now. Axios launched in 2016 with a radical idea: strict news down to essential information. Updates average under 300 words, paragraphs run 1 to 2 sentences, no fluff, no over-explanation. Their research found that when organizations adopted this smart brevity approach, engagement spiked, decision-making accelerated, and leaders were perceived as significantly more effective. They calculated the ROI. For a company with 5,000 employees, eliminating unnecessary justification from weekly updates saves over 150 hours of productivity. That's just one communication channel. But here's what's changed since 2016. Attention spans have collapsed further. We're living in the era of Twitter threads, Slack messages, and asynchronous communication. The digital world has made over-explanation stand out more dramatically than ever before. Brevity isn't just efficient anymore, it's a status signal. In remote work environments where you can't rely on in-person presence, your communication style becomes your identity. Brief, consonant communication screams competence. Verbose justification screams anxiety. The question becomes, which signal are you sending?
Let's consolidate this. Core insight. Over-explanation signals submission, not competence. The mechanism: when you provide excessive external justification, you undermine internal authority and trigger power distance communication patterns that lower your perceived status. This matters because in an attention-scarce, digitally mediated world, every unnecessary word you write or speak is training people to discount your judgment. Research shows employees take longer to process over-explained decisions, remember them less accurately, and perceive the decision-maker as less confident. But knowing this is only half the equation. Here's what you can do starting tomorrow. If you're someone who's built a career on being thorough and explaining everything, and now you're realizing that thoroughness might be costing you authority, this shift changes everything. The techniques I'm about to show you aren't about withholding information. They're about communicating confidence through clarity and trusting your judgment enough to let it stand without constant defense. Let's get tactical.
First strategy: the decision statement. This is brutal in its simplicity. State your decision or position in one clear sentence, period. No preemptive justification. Why this works? Confident assertion creates its own authority. When you state something directly, listeners' brains assume you have solid reasons. They don't need to hear them unless they specifically ask. The neuroscience here is clear. Over-justification triggers skepticism because it suggests you're trying to convince yourself as much as others. Example: instead of, "I think we should go with vendor A because they have better reviews and I've researched this extensively, and while vendor B has advantages based on all the data," just say, We're going with vendor A, happy to discuss specifics if needed. Watch what happens. Most of the time, people just accept it and move on. The questions you get are clearer, more focused. Common mistake, adding "I think" or "I feel like" before your statement, or following with "but I could be wrong." Every qualifier you add dilutes your authority. Success marker, your decisions are accepted without prolonged debate, and meetings move significantly faster. Second technique, the invitation flip. Instead of explaining why you made a choice, invite questions if someone needs more information. This flips the power dynamic entirely. When you over-explain, you're essentially asking permission for your decision. When you state a decision and invite questions, you're demonstrating confidence while remaining accessible. The message becomes, "I'm secure in this, and I'm available if you need context." Example, someone asks if you can make Tuesday's meeting. Instead of, "I can't make Tuesday because I have a doctor's appointment I scheduled weeks ago that I couldn't reschedule, and it's important because," say, "I can't make Tuesday. Let me know what you need from me beforehand." Or, if you want warmth, "I can't make Tuesday, but I'm available to discuss separately if needed." The invitation is there. You're not being cold, but you're also not justifying your medical appointment to a colleague. Why would you? Common mistake, offering unsolicited explanations just in case. Just in case what? In case they judge you? Let them ask first. Success marker, fewer follow-up questions, faster acceptance of your boundaries. Now here's where it gets counterintuitive. Silence. Most people fear silence like it's going to kill them. It won't. It's about to become your most powerful tool. Third strategy, the confidence pause. After making a statement, pause for 2 to 3 seconds instead of immediately explaining or elaborating. Research on nonverbal communication shows comfortable silence signals confidence like almost nothing else. When you rush to fill silence with explanation, you're signaling discomfort with your own position. The pause does 2 things. First, it gives your statement weight. It allows it to land. Second, it creates space for others to respond rather than you dominating with justification. Try this. We're implementing this new process. Implementation starts Monday. Feel that? That pause is doing work. It's showing you're comfortable with your decision. Neuroscience research shows the brain processes and retains information better when there's a brief pause after important statements. Common mistake? Pausing, but then breaking your own pause because the silence feels awkward. Sit in it. Let others process. Success marker? Others lean in rather than tune out. Questions become more thoughtful. Your statements carry measurably more weight in meetings. Fourth technique, the context test. Before explaining anything, ask yourself, did they ask for this context, or am I offering it defensively? This builds self-awareness about defensive communication patterns. Most over-explanation happens preemptively. You're not responding to a request for information, but to your own anxiety about being judged or misunderstood. Example, your boss asks, "Can you get me the Q3 report by Thursday?" Your internal anxiety screams, "I'm not sure I can because I have 3 other projects and I don't want them to think I'm not working hard enough, so maybe I should explain all my competing priorities." Context test. Did they ask why you might not be able to? No. Did they ask about your workload? No. They asked a simple question. Better answer, "Thursday works," or "Thursday's tight. Would Friday work?" That's it.
If they need to know why Friday instead of Thursday, they'll ask. Trust that people will ask for what they need, rather than preemptively defending choices they haven't even questioned yet. Success marker. Your communication becomes responsive instead of reactive, and people ask follow-ups only when they actually need more information. Here's the critical nuance. This doesn't mean never explain anything. When someone is teaching or training, thorough explanation is their job. When you're in a genuine crisis affecting safety or finances, stakeholders deserve complete information. When you're building new relationships, some additional context helps establish trust. The line is this: are you explaining because someone needs the information, or because you're managing your own anxiety? Some communication experts argue that leaders should always provide full context. They point to research showing employees often feel under-communicated to. But that research focuses on information withholding, leaders not sharing important updates. That's different from over-justifying individual decisions. Those are distinct issues. With increased authority comes responsibility. If people are following your lead more readily because you communicate confidently, you must ensure your decisions are actually well thought out. Confidence without competence is just arrogance. The ethical version: be clear, be available, be honest, but don't confuse confidence with infallibility. When you're wrong, acknowledge it directly and wait for it, briefly.
So here's what we've discovered. The explanation you think builds trust is actually signaling submission. Every time you justify what nobody questioned, you're training people, including yourself, to doubt your judgment. Instead of, "I'm explaining myself into oblivion," you can now say, "Here's the decision," and let your confidence speak. First step: tomorrow, count how many times you explain something nobody asked about. That awareness alone will start shifting the pattern. If this changed how you see communication, hit that like button. Questions? Drop them below. Want more on power dynamics and influence? Check the card above and subscribe. Stop explaining, start leading. In the previous video, we revealed why bad boys win. You know their main secret? They never explain themselves.